Okay, thanks for the opportunity to talk to you all today about something that I'm extremely passionate about, and that's, as we call it now, AMS. We've had extremely good support from the Department of State Development. Paul and Lachlan and the team have been right in behind this initiative since about May last year, when I first went to Paul and we discussed what was going on in South Australia. Having spent a couple of years in Western Australia and coming back last year to South Australia and just seeing more and more bad news about what was going on here with closures of various plants and assets around not only Adelaide but now, as we've seen in recent times, in the mining space with the downturn. It's become more and more evident that we can't just sit back and let the market do its thing. We've actually got to do something proactively from a South Australian supply chain perspective in terms of how we best interact into not only the South Australian market, the Australian marketplace, but also, importantly, the export market here globally. So that's really what we're about today. So what is AMS? Well, it's a number of things, but its essence and its core is about modularisation. It's about doing as much as you can off-site, as least as you can on-site. If you're looking at clients now, and if we focus around the resources and energy sectors and the stress they're under, they will continue to develop new projects, and they will continue to look for different ways of improving their operations. So we feel that advanced modularisation is one important pillar to that, and that's definitely the feedback we've had through the phase last year when we conducted the concept study, and we went and interviewed the BHPs and the Alukas here, and the Rex Minerals and the Iron Roads of the world and the Santoses, talked to them about where they were at and whether something like AMS was something that was attractive to them and what their problems were. So AMS, as I said, to compete in the modular world, you need to have innovation, and that needs to be technology driven. The modular part is all about, as I said before, doing as much as you can off-site, but off-site not replicating what we class as conventional stick build. It's more about, as we move forward, about lean manufacturing and how we change the whole mindset of how we build equipment, and taking our heritage in South Australia from a manufacturing standpoint in the car industry will help us achieve that. And the solutions part is really, that's not just about the build phase. It's, as I said before, it's about the whole asset life cycle, trying to look at projects and trying to build innovation into those solutions, not just for a capital gain, but for looking at the NPV over the asset life cycle and trying to build as much efficiency as you can into those solutions. And there's a number of initiatives that DSD are running at the moment that hooks into this. So why would we consider AMS here in South Australia? I mean, why would we do it? You know, are we going to be good at it? It's really about, as I said before, I mean, we've got a strong heritage back to the 50s in the manufacturing sector. We know there's a pending closure of Holden's coming, and that's putting a lot of stress on that supply chain, let alone the resources supply chain, and we've visited a number of those companies, and I've been there in that space, so I understand the stresses there. We have a high skill base, but if we don't do anything about it, that skill base will continue to erode, and it will leave the state, and our children will leave the state, and that's not a good thing. We need more export focus, because the market, you know, as we all know, is down particularly in South Australia, let alone Australia at the moment. So unless you've got a way of de-risking that, and the only way you can do that is to get to other markets with a value proposition that are either an Australian-based client who's looking offshore, which a lot of them are doing, or eventually, as we mature, we chase those international clients with solutions. That's really the way of de-risking the current situation that we're in. We have to learn from it. As I said, what will give us an edge, we believe, is the lean manufacturing component. You know, it's not about, as I said, taking a stick build out in the field and replicating that in a large yard, you've got to change the methodology of how you go about it. That's how you get the costs down. It's not about, I've had a lot of people say to me, Nick, you can't compete with Korea and China and these locations. I get that. I understand the labour imbalance, but you've got to look at the other way as well. I mean, there's a lot of inefficiencies in some of those markets. There's not a lot of innovation in those areas as well. They do some good stuff and some big stuff, but we believe we can find some niche opportunities with AMS. You might have seen the Premier's announcement week before last. So AMS is now recognised, and thanks to Paul and the courage of DSD, AMS is now out there in the public domain as one of the pillars for the Northern Economic Development Plan. So that's focused around the northern suburbs of Adelaide. That's where the stress point's going to come pretty soon when Holden's does eventually close its door. But important message, it's not just about the northern suburbs. Our AMS is about engaging with the complete total supply chain right across South Australia, including Mark's here, including the Iron Triangle, and we'll definitely be working and talking to the complete supply chain as we move forward with AMS. So as I said, last May, we for about a four-month journey, we had a high-level look in the resources sector. We had a look at current demand. We had a bit of a look at supply in terms of modular-type organisations, particularly the Asian module yards, to see what they were really doing, what their strengths were, where their weaknesses were, so we could see if we could exploit some opportunity. The SWOT area was great. We engaged with some industry experts here in South Australia to get their feedback as to whether they thought this was a valid initiative, and that was very positive, and we learned a lot from that. And a local South Australian perspective, we've also been engaging with the supply chain, and we'll be doing more of that. So that was a concept study that we ran. To be honest, when we started AMS and first thought about AMS, I thought of it as a commercial vehicle. We were maybe going to bring a few companies together and we were going to form this AMS Inc. It was going to be a commercial business, and it was going to compete in a modular world in resources and in other sectors as the opportunities presented themselves. I guess through this consultation process, and we met with DTC and some of the other alliance groups, Water Industry Alliance, Aerospace Alliance, to really understand their success formula. And as a result of that, ultimately the recommendation we made was that AMS would be formed as an alliance framework with member organisations as part of that alliance. It wasn't going to be one large commercial vehicle that was going to take the march in the market, and therefore the opportunity for the supply chain would dissipate. This is about having multiple organisations that understand modularisation, that want to be part of the journey moving forward. These were some of the markets. When we did our analysis, one of the important aspects of it was that we found that Australian ASX-listed resources companies, with the stress in the Australian marketplace, we found they were moving their vision more to offshore. They're going to continue to run their businesses. They're just looking for projects in other jurisdictions. So we found quite a shift in pipeline focus for those organisations moving offshore. And that's important to understand, because part of our strategy is to work with and build relationships with those ASX-listed companies, not only here in South Australia, but eventually across Australia, once we establish our value proposition. So it's following those companies into international markets that want the quality that Australian companies, and particularly South Australian companies, can provide. So we see a lot of opportunity in those marketplaces. As I said, so this was the vision for AMS. So it's that we will become, in South Australia, the very, very best at advanced modular solutions. America have done it with the Silicon Valley, Germany, Sweden, Finland. They're not low-cost jurisdictions. So we can do this sort of work because, as I said before, we have a heritage in it, we understand it. We're a small state. We're a small capital city. We have very good collaboration between government, industry, R&D, so we can come together very quickly and solve these problems. So that's the vision there on the left at the top. I don't want to read it to you verbatim, but it's about the total spectrum of development across modularisation. It may be just from the front end that we're doing some innovation and consulting for our Chinese partner country, in-country situation. It may well be that we're going all the way through to a build phase and an asset management phase. So it's all the aspects of the supply chain that we can be excellent at, but it doesn't necessarily mean on any given project or client that we have to do everything, because there's going to be scenarios where we're not going to be able to do everything. At its cornerstone, AMS is not only about an alliance framework that I'll show you, it has to have a centre of excellence that underpins it. And the centre of excellence is about developing the standards that we feel we need to develop to differentiate ourselves at a global level, not an Australian level, at a global level, to take ourselves in front of what's happening in Korea and China and those other jurisdictions. So that's its cornerstone. It's about learning from projects and saying, wait on a minute, we've sort of solved that, but we can do that a hell of a lot better. Let's put that into the centre of excellence. Let's work on that for a longer term solution, and we continue to build on those sorts of initiatives. An example might be, we're talking about large modular structures. We might come up with a better way of flat packing the structures themselves so that they can fold down into place, and when we take them to the end game, we can reconstitute them a lot quicker and get them back into place through some smart key locking of the design. So a lot of those things are in place, but they can be improved on. Piping systems, how they connect, electrics, ICT. There's a number of areas for growth. But it's all got to be about the right-hand bottom corner, and that is no one's going to engage with unless you've got a value proposition. So it's got to be about an efficiency gain for the client. It's got to be about a cost down. It's got to be about a life cycle benefit. So if we can demonstrate, find out from the client what their problems are, and Nicole touched a lot on that in her presentation, and solve those issues through AMS. And we know in our organisation, through experience on projects, we've seen large modules, good and the bad. We've seen modules coming in full of air from China, reworked, repainted, QA'd, all sorts of problems. So that's not necessarily the fault of the yard. That's probably a fault of a lot of things across the logistics of the project itself. But it can be done a lot better. So these were the key, as I said, the key recommendations that we made to government was that we should establish an alliance. And that alliance is made up of industry and the supply chain, it's made up of technology partners, research and development, and importantly, government. And Paul keeps saying it, and it's a clear message I've got in my mind. The government understand they need to intervene strategically into the marketplace. We can't just sit back here and wait for the market to right itself in South Australia. We have to get proactive, and this is a vehicle to do that. As I said, supported by a global centre of excellence, but it's about developing technologies across a spectrum of marketplaces, as I'm saying there. It's resources is where we're starting, but it's also defence, energy, oil and gas. Modularisation exists in lots of markets, commercial buildings, plants on top of buildings. Modularisation is across it, and therefore the standards are repeatable. We need to find those repeatable areas and unlock them. There's also a lot of funding available in the marketplace, more so at a federal level, and one of the key initiatives we'll be undertaking is trying to look for areas where we can unlock some of that funding to help fast-track this initiative. So this is the plan roadmap for this year. It's probably a bit hard to follow, but at its essence, where we're at right now is we're currently identifying, we're stress testing AMS right now. We're actually identifying pilot projects, and the logical place to go was back to the companies that we interviewed in the first place. So we went back to them and we said, here's the findings of the concept study. We're looking for pilot projects. Have you got something? And I can tell you, having been in business development for a number of years, sitting with the government, telling the client that this is important to the state as much as, we're just, WSP are just here as an AMS champion. We're trying to drive opportunity, not just for our business, but for the totality of the supply chain. So having the government there is extremely important. So we've opened up, we've got one pilot project we're working on at the moment, which is the Oz Minerals Carrapateena project. So we're currently competing against a global player. That business would not come to South Australia, or would come down the supply chain. So what we're finding is we're able to intervene a lot earlier in the conversation space with the client by saying, we have a South Australian mindset around AMS, we have support from the government, and we have a mature supply chain that wants to support the AMS initiative. Mr. Client, can you give us an opportunity with that particular project? And that's we found that with Oz Minerals, they've been very supportive. We still have to demonstrate value at the end of the concept study. That's what we're driving to do. We'll deliver that in the next couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. Then hopefully we'll move forward into feasibility study. So we have that project. We've just signed up another project in South Australia. We're working with Rex Minerals, looking at a parallel way of developing that project. So looking at some different areas to add value to that project. So there's 2. We've got others in the pipeline, not only in resources, but also looking outside of resources, defence, renewable energy. So we've got to test it, and then we've got to, in the second half of the year, we'll start putting the framework around the AMS Alliance and the Centre of Excellence and trying to define that, because without that, the projects are just swinging in the breeze without a lot of support. So we understand it needs an alliance framework around it, it needs a centre of excellence. The client wants to see a longer term commitment around their projects. Otherwise, they won't give it the state the business. That's the reality. So that's what a pilot project looks like. So we've got a client, we have the state government, we have industry, co-contribution. The consortia that we'll at the moment, we're sort of hand-picking them. So the Oz Minerals project has been hand-picked to a degree, but we understand we've got to put some maturity around that leading partner, because someone has to take the commercial risk ultimately. The client's going to say, well, this is nice, but who's ultimately taking the risk? So we get that. So in the case of the Oz Minerals project, we brought in an international technology partner, which is Uditech. We've got the local supply chain currently working with Uditech and ourselves to put together that solution. As I said before, the AMS Alliance and the Centre of Excellence needs to underpin and support those pilot projects. So I haven't put many pictures up today. I've got a heap of them, but just trying to give you an understanding, a vision. I mean, there's a modular copper plant. We're seeing that technology shift more and more and more. These international companies are building more modularisation offshore in their European jurisdictions. If you look at companies like Uditech, what we're about, to a degree, is bringing and looking to attract some of those technology companies where we can into South Australia. That's what the state government want to see. It's the supply chain, adding value, but it's attracting, where we can, international companies who are based in other parts of Australia and more so typically in Asia. How do we bring some of those companies into South Australia and give them a base load of opportunity, which is primarily into the Southern Hemispherian marketplaces? So they're the sorts of things we're having to look at, and we are looking at. So this is where, let's let that come up. So all the green is what we've completed. We've completed the concept study. As I said, we're currently pursuing and selecting pilot projects. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the pipeline at the moment, looking for more. So if there's anyone here today that's working, with a client and perhaps some challenges with the client and are looking for a more complete solution, then we're open to understanding more about those opportunities. So please come and see me, or come and see Paul or Lachlan. We're really in a communication space now. We're trying to get the message out. That will become more mature as we move forward. But the key thing, as I said, we need to demonstrate at a concept level that we've got something, and then we can move towards full feasibility study with some real projects where we've knocked the competition away and we've got some clear air, and we're moving into a detailed feasibility, and then we can engage more heavily with the supply chain and bolt on as much innovation as we can around the solution. As I keep saying, I think we've got 95% of the answers here in South Australia already. It's probably lacking a bit on the technology side, but we can attract those partners into to opportunities. So that's the benefit for the PACE supply chain initiative. As I said, it allows the existing South Australian supply chain to participate on national and international projects through AMS. So it doesn't necessarily mean that every small business has to go and do business development and marketing into Asia. They can drive through a vehicle like AMS. And we'll do the high level stuff. So, you know, it's a good way into the market. But it needs to have an export focus. We've seen the stress we're under now. This needs to be an 80-20, I believe. That's where aspirationally we need to head towards. It will encourage companies to innovate and improve. That's the environment, the culture we want to drive through AMS. It's trying to help companies grow in South Australia and innovate and develop more. And as I said before, it's about, I think, attracting some OEMs, global OEMs, into South Australia. We've got some great initiatives here with Tonsley Park and Mawson Lakes and some fantastic things going on. AMS is about taking advantage of all those. And I think the last slide, that's really just a summary. As I said before, it's now recognised in the Northern Economic Development Plan, so we need to move forward with that. It is an alliance and a framework and a centre of excellence, so everyone can participate in AMS. It's not exclusive. It's about bringing the local supply chain along for the ride. And we talked about the OEMs. I think there's a great opportunity. If we look at even things like the Nuclear Royal Commission that's going on right now, we look at some of the initiatives that I think will roll out of that. There's some great opportunities to attract international companies into this jurisdiction who get it, who want to set up here and establish. So, you know, they're the sorts of things we need to be looking for. And as I said before, it's not constrained to resources. We are resources and energy. There's a lot of modularisation that goes on. So there's a great market there, but it also, I think, extends into other markets, but we need to test those other markets. And as I said at the start, it's about the asset management life cycle. It's about having remote monitoring on a copper plant that we might sell to a client who happens to be in Central Africa, but we're providing that value proposition out of South Australia. We're monitoring the asset. We're providing maintenance. We can do all those things. We're already doing them. EJ's here from IPACS. We've got a number of these initiatives going on. Their remote monitoring trial at Prominent Hill. It's like a mini remote operating centre. We've got these things already. We just need to glue them all together. So that's my presentation. As I said, happy to talk to anyone later, or Paul or Lachlan the same. So thanks for your time.